Major breaking news, the Episcopal Church just announced that they are ending their decades-long partnership with the federal government over moral objections to Donald Trump's policies. In a letter sent to members of the church, the Most Reverend Sean W. Rowe, the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, said that 2 weeks ago, the government, quote, informed Episcopal migration.
Hello, welcome once again to my YouTube channel. After Trump administration, welcome 49 white South Africans at the airport. Episcopal Church on Monday 12, 2025 vote to cut off humanitarian refugee funding. This move is because the church doesn't respect racial discrimination, as in the case of white Afrikaners. Let's watch.
Ministries that under the terms of our federal grant, we are expected to resettle white Afrikaners from South Africa whom the U.S. government has classified as refugees. The request, Rowe said, crossed a moral line for the Episcopal Church, and they're not doing it. He continued saying, quote, in light of our church's steadfast commitment to racial justice and reconciliation and our historic ties with the Anglican Church of South Africa, we are not able to take this step. He also announced that the denomination will continue to support immigrants and refugees in other ways, such as offering aid to refugees who have already been resettled. Now, this is a big deal. There is a lot of history here with the Episcopal Church, apartheid South Africa, and obviously the history there has played into this decision by the church, but Donald Trump continues to lose the groups that typically would be supporting him.
We have some huge news right now. The Episcopal Church has officially ended its partnership with the United States government to help resettle refugees after the United States government chose to make an exception to resettle white South African residents over other refugees. In a major letter issued just minutes ago, the Episcopal Church has decided to end this nearly 4 decades old relationship between the church and the federal government, citing its moral opposition to resettling white South African residents who have been classified as refugees by Donald Trump and leaving other refugees out, like Afghan refugees. Earlier this year, the United States government really ended all refugee resettlement programs, but recently made an exception for white South African residents, and the first batch of white South African resettled refugees actually landed in America today. Well, now the Episcopal Church is saying no to the federal government.
Hey y'all, it's Judy. It's still Monday. This just in from the Episcopal Church. They don't want nothing to do with our government anymore because they believe it's racist. And it is. This because Trump is allowing just white folks to come from South Africa under refugee status and live amongst us, while the brown people are getting nothing but ice, baby. It's good to know there's some good Christians, real Christians out there. You know? I mean, I'm from Georgia. I'm surrounded by a bunch of y'all MAGA that aren't. You know, it ain't what you say, MAGA. It's what you do. It's what you believe. It's who you are inside. And we know who you are.
The Episcopal Church just ended a 40-year agreement with the U.S. government. What was the reason behind this? Because they were asked to prioritize white South African refugees over the brown and black refugees that have been waiting for years. What was the church's response? They said no. They said that's not justice and that's not what they stand for. Since the 80s, they've helped resettle over 100,000 people, but they walked away from the money because they refuse to be a part of racial favoritism dressed up as policy. The Pope also just spoke out saying we need to defend free speech and free press, otherwise the truth gets buried. So tell me this, why are churches, besides white Christian nationalist evangelical churches, speaking out louder on human rights than our own elected leaders? I mean, what happens when moral clarity comes from the pulpit rather than the podiums? Maybe it's time we actually listen.
So the Episcopal Church is ending its 4-decade relationship with the U.S. federal government to help settle refugees. It said in a letter, in light of our church's steadfast commitment to racial justice and reconciliation and our historic ties with the Anglican Church of South Africa, we are not able to take this step. Accordingly, we have determined that by the end of the federal fiscal year, we will conclude our refugee resettlement grant agreements with the U.S. federal government.
So the Episcopal Church is no longer wanting to work with the U.S. government. They are shutting down a program that they had where they worked with refugees. Look at this. They're saying it's a moral problem in a striking move that ends nearly 4 decades old relationship between the federal government and the church. The denomination announced on Monday that it is terminating its partnership with the government to resettle refugees, citing moral opposition to resettling white Afrikaners from South Africa who have been classified as refugees. It's a very bold move, and I applaud the church. We need organizations to come against these things that are happening, and that's a good step. This is ridiculous. You know, just a few years ago, these same group was complaining about migrants coming in and taking resources and getting free, housing and food. And they're doing the same thing, but they're choosing, right now, we're not taking any immigrants in America. It's all shut down. And we're going to take in those people? Where are they running from? They have all the wealth in that area. They have the upper hand. They're not in any, they don't need to escape. But all the places where people do need to escape from, and we have our doors shut. This is getting serious.
The Episcopal Church has announced that they are ending their decades-long relationship with the U.S. government and refugee resettlement program. Why? Because this time the refugees are white people. The Trump administration is bringing in not even 100 refugees from South Africa. If there ever was a case of real refugees, not just people who say, oh, I don't like it here, I'm poor in this country, but these Afrikaners, it's open season on them from their own government. That's a real refugee. And the Episcopal Church opposes that. Racism, but it's anti-white racism, so it's okay.
This is something going on that you need to know about. Episcopal churches has refused to resettle white Afrikaners. According to NPR, Episcopal Church on Monday said that it is terminating its partnership with government to resettle refugees, citing moral opposition to resettling white Afrikaners from South Africa who have been classified as refugees by the Trump administration. In a letter sent to members by the presiding bishop, Reverend Sean Rowe, said that 2 weeks ago the federal government informed the Episcopal Church that under the term of their federal grant, they expected to resettle white Afrikaners from South Africa in the United States. A request, Rowe said, crossed the moral line for the Episcopal Church. Among this announcement was the fact that President Trump signed an executive order halting all refugee programs and halting payment to all organizations assisting with refugee resettlement.
The Episcopal Church has refused to help resettle a group of white South African refugees, citing a commitment to racial justice. Presiding Bishop Sean Rowe announced the decision shortly after 49 South Africans began their journey to the United States, emphasizing the church's ties to the Anglican Church of South Africa and its stance on racial equity as reasons for the refusal. In 2024, the Episcopal Church helped settle over 5,000 refugees. It is amazing. The Episcopal Church turned away actual victims of racism to protect their reputation for fighting racism. Finally, a church that practices what it preaches, turning away refugees based on skin color, just like Jesus would have wanted.
Hello, Episcopal Church. I'm Linda, and I'm a proud Episcopalian. Thank you for setting a good example of what it means to follow Jesus, love your neighbor, and understand your neighbor includes the poor, the marginalized, the oppressed. For decades, through Episcopal Migration Services, you have been a strong supporter of refugees, helping the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, before and after they arrive on our shores. I have a friend who is a white South African. She left because of apartheid, because of the systemic abuse she saw, because she was taught racism growing up, and she knew it was wrong. She is now a U.S. citizen, embarrassed and angry at both her home country and her adopted one. She asked me, where was the U.S. when Black South Africans were being shot in the street for protesting against their marginalization? Instead, the government believes white South Africans are in danger of genocide because of the murders of 8 white farmers, 0.00002% of white South Africans. Meanwhile, in the United States, legal residents, including those here because of persecution in their home countries, are rounded up, detained, and deported. Some are languishing in CCOT. Outside the United States, thousands of people have been waiting years to be allowed to cross our border. The white refugees from Elon Musk's home country have been given vastly preferential treatment. They were screened and cleared within 3 months. They arrived on a U.S. government-chartered plane. In other words, your tax dollars paid for it. They were met by U.S. dignitaries and have been fast-tracked for government benefits and citizenship. Pure and simple, this is what racism looks like. The Episcopal Church has been a staunch supporter in the fight for racial justice, and refusal to work with the Republican government was not based solely on what is happening in the U.S., but in consultation with the Archbishop of Cape Town. The presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, Rowe, said, "I am saddened and ashamed that many of the refugees who are being denied entrance to the United States are brave people who worked alongside our military in Iraq and Afghanistan and now face danger at home because of their service to our country. I also grieve that victims of religious persecution, including Christians, have not been granted refuge in recent months." For those of you who are saying it is awful for the Episcopal Church to stop helping thousands of refugees because of less than 60 people, that is not what is happening. The work is continuing, just without funding or support from the federal government, and without having to adhere to Republican views inconsistent with the Gospels. The needs of the vulnerable, those truly in danger, those without resources, are still a focus of the Church. At its core, the Episcopal Church believes in Scripture, tradition, and rational thought. We don't just open our doors to the marginalized, we ordain them. Male and female, black, white, and brown, members of the LGBTQ community, DACA recipients, immigrants, refugees, indigenous people, human beings. This is what I learned in the Episcopal Church. Love God, love others. The rest is details. Bye, church. Have a nice day and keep up the kingdom work.
Having watched the videos above, it's clear enough Episcopal Church won't receive the 49 white South Africans. We are all watching to see how Trump administration will respond to this move. Do you support the Episcopal Church cutting off caregiving status to white South Africans? Let me know what you think about the following question on the comment section below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you, family. Bye.